Welcome to another episode of Disruptors. Today we have Dr. Garrett with us. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. If you don't mind taking a couple minutes just to introduce yourself and your current role.
So, Teresa Garrett, I am currently a full professor of chemistry at Sweetbriar College. I just spent 4.5 years being vice president of academic affairs and dean of the college there.
Okay. So that's where you are now. I like always going back to the beginning.
Sure.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in upstate New York, about 100 miles north of New York City, in an area of the Mid-Hudson Valley, and lived there until I was through my first year of high school. And then we moved to Florida, where I went to high school and college, then grad school at Duke, and then back to New York for my first job at Vassar College, and then ultimately now to Virginia, where we are.
So you've been all up and down the East Coast.
The Eastern Seaboard, yep. And the other day, my husband and I had a conversation about whether or not we're Southerners, because I think we've lived more time south of the Mason-Dixon line than above it. So
I considered when I started using the term y'all and all y'all that I was officially a Southerner because I grew up in New England. So for me, that was
it's a very good gender inclusive term that I have continued to use from when I picked it up in North Carolina.
It's just to the point. Like
it is one syllable, good to go.
But so thinking back to your childhood, what was the value of education placed at that time?
I didn't feel any particular pressure from my family about education, but I was always pretty good at school. Actually really good at school. And I mean, just was true. I was kind of a total nerd. But I also really saw it as a ticket to things that I wanted. And my parents got divorced when I was 6. And when I was in middle school, high school, I somehow came to the understanding that if I did well in school, that I wouldn't have to deal with my parents when it came to college, dealing with money or who's going to pay for what or any of that stuff. And, that was always this point of contention between my parents of it was money. And I was like, this is a thing I can control. And so that ultimately did happen. It informed where I went to school, even because I went to a place where I didn't have to worry about the cost. I got scholarships. I had all the more or less taken care of. And of course, they did support me in really important ways, even monetarily, but it wasn't these like big tuition bills that had to be dealt with. So yeah, I always was good at school. I always put a high value on it. I don't really know where that came from, except for sort of this intrinsic understanding that this is going to get me to a better place than or where I wanted to go.
So did school just come easy to you, or did you have to work at it to be good?
It didn't feel super hard, but I was always like diligent, timely, careful, did my work on time. I guess having a sense of not wanting a little bit of this thing that's quite common in students that achieve highly. I wanted everybody to like me, right? And so this fear of being in trouble or not being liked if I didn't do my work well or good, and just sort of that positive loop that happens when you do well and people are happy with you and give you gold stars and scratch and sniff stickers. I remember getting when I was in late elementary school, things like that.
So typically I ask the next question of when did you know you were headed to college, but you've kind of already touched that. So how many schools did you apply to, and then where did you end up?
I didn't apply to very many.
Okay.
And even though my dad went to college, I would identify as being a de facto first gen student. I did not really have kind of parental guidance in that process. Um, so I applied to maybe 5 schools.
Okay.
And then I ultimately ended up at Florida State University, as I said, one, because of the money, but also I had done a summer science and math camp after my junior year of high school
Okay.
there at Florida State. It was a 6-week National Science Foundation funded program. So I felt really comfortable there. And like I knew people that I would be okay there. And I think that that's another reason why I do hold that first gen inclination, because I went to college and I didn't have any idea what was going on. And so being at this place where I knew a couple of faculty members, I knew how to walk around the campus. It was a good match for me.
So you graduate college, do you go straight into a graduate degree or do you get a job first?
No, I went straight in. Yep.
And so where was the next school?
Duke University.
Okay. And what did you major in at Duke?
I graduated from Florida State with a biochemistry major, and I was a biochemistry. I'm a biochemistry PhD from Duke.
Okay.
So I'm one of those students who went in knowing that I was going to be in biochemistry, and then I did it, even though I did think I was going to go to medical school when I first started college.
What changed your mind?
So a couple things. One is in my first semester, I went and talked to the pre-med advisor,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in this basement office with this guy who I just remember the feelings,
Mm-hmm.
right? I remember him looking at my transcript, and I had a lot of AP credit, which made me like a sophomore
Okay.
credit wise,
Mm-hmm.
and him saying, well, you should take the MCAT next year, which would have been my junior year. And I I had never really thought about graduating early. It just hadn't really cemented in my
Mm-hmm.
mind. Um, and so he scared me. He freaked me out. I wasn't ready for that. And then the second semester of my first year at Florida State, because I was in the honors program, we had the option to, instead of doing a kind of canned chemistry lab for our Gen Chem
Mm-hmm.
sequence, we could do independent research with a faculty member. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did that with one of the faculty members who I had worked with or had known from that summer program, a man named Bill Marslow. And he was this guy who just he was really smart, kind of that uh cliched uh nerdy scientist guy.
Did he have a pocket
And
protector?
I mean, he might have. I mean, he the big dark rim glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he could he seemed to know the genetic code, and he was teaching me these biochemical concepts in the summer that I just thought were so amazing. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. This is so cool. And so I got to work in his lab with a postdoc. And then at the end of that semester, Bill Marslow moved to a different institution, but he hooked me up with another person in the biology department at Florida State, a professor named Lloyd Epstein. And I worked in his lab from that summer all the way till I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where like that connection to undergraduate research opened my eyes to like this thing that I really was like, this I like. And I
Mm-hmm.
was doing like dumb stuff, like nothing very fancy, nothing cutting edge, but it was all like, oh my gosh,
But it was
super
cutting
exciting.
edge to you at the
Oh,
time.
it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, over my career, I recapitulated that experience that I had with students where, the first time that they streak cells on a petri dish and they come in the next morning and there's colonies there, they're just mesmerized by this thing that I've done maybe 100,000 times, right? I'm like, well, this is only one step of like the good stuff is to come, but
It's like
yeah,
50 steps later.
that awe and wonder and that
Mhm.
discovery was a thing that I really came to understand. And I think I was one of those students who, because I was had this affinity for math and science, I, when you're in high school, unless it's a very special kind of place or you have a special kind of circumstance, the people that you see in the world who are using that thinking are doctors, maybe
Mm,
engineers. I mean, even, I really, and so that's all you think that there is to be. And
mhm.
so I discovered that, oh, I could be a scientist. That's cool. And so that's what I ended up doing. That's how I became a biochemist.
So you kind of touched on it, but what was the value of graduate education to you?
Oh, the terminal degree.
It means to the end, or like, did you want to
Yeah.
be a doctor? Okay.
Well, I think at the moment when I was in grad school, well, before I went to grad school, when I was, junior, senior, getting ready to go to graduate
Mhm.
school, I saw it as a means to the end of uh, winning the Nobel Prize in chemistry, which is really what my 21-year-old self would have declared to you. I'm going to graduate from Duke, and then I'm going to get a high power postdoc. Then I'm going to have my lab, and then I'm going to win the Nobel Prize in chemistry and show all those men. I would have literally uttered those words as a 21-year-old. That was the person
I
that was like the way I saw things.
I think that's
And
great, right? Like
yeah,
what a big dream or
yeah,
goal. I shouldn't say dream, ambition.
yeah, yeah. But as I kind of look back at my life or as I matured, I definitely see there was many moments where I was like, having this terminal degree in my back pocket is the thing.
Mm,
It's the thing that keeps the doors opened. It's the thing that nobody takes away from me. And um and so that was the thing.
mhm,
Yeah. And so I tell students, why aren't you getting the terminal degree?
mhm.
Whatever that field you're in, push to that. Because at the end of the day, then there's no ceiling above your head.
Mhm. Oh, I agree.
At least based on that, right? There's
Right.
a ceiling, but it's not that.
There's other
It's
ones,
not.
but yeah.
It is a ceiling that you can control being there.
Yes. So you graduate from Duke. What's
Hmm.
next?
Well, I did my dissertation 7 months pregnant with my first daughter. So I graduated and then had a baby.
Hmm.
And then I took 6 months off and worked part time as a postdoc in the same lab that I did my PhD in. And I didn't like it. I was unhappy being a working mom, even though I was only working part time. So I stopped
Hmm.
and then was a stay at home mom for more or less for 4.5 years.
Hmm.
I had my second daughter 2 years later. And then I was able to pick up a part time teaching opportunity at Duke, teaching in the School of Nursing.
Okay.
And then it was in the summer, 1 day a week. I just had to get a babysitter for one long afternoon.
Hmm.
It was fine. I could do all the prep at different times. It was a good sort of first step back. And then when my youngest was 3, I went back to work as in this hybrid position where I was really helping to supervise this very intensive first year medical school class called Molecules and Cells. It covered biochemistry, molecular biology, genetics in 6 weeks for med students. And
Wow.
they really, really needed somebody who kind of knew the breadth of that stuff with some authority to
Hmm.
kind of be there as the glue among the like 70 faculty taught in this, 120 lectures.
Wow.
It was like somebody to help orchestrate it and also to be this kind of continuous presence that could help students move from the beginning to the end. So I did that. I then also went back to do research in the lab that my I did my PhD in. My PI got a grant for a different kind of project, and he needed a project manager for that. So I took on that role. And then I started teaching summer undergraduate biochemistry. So I was doing those three things for 4 years. And I only worked 30 hours a week. So
Do you feel like that gave you a balance?
It did. And part of my coming back to work in the research lab was that I couldn't work full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that just I just knew that I didn't want my kids being in before school, after school, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I were able to work out with me working 30 hours a week that he would do the mornings and I would do the afternoon. So I went in early and I came home in time to get them off the bus or pick up at the sort of normal preschool time that my youngest daughter was doing.
Okay.
So yeah. So my first full-time job was at Vassar.
Okay. And what was that?
Assistant professor of chemistry.
So just solely teaching chemistry at that point, or was there lab work or?
Yeah, so definitely it's an institution that expects, I used to tell new faculty, 50% teaching, 50% research, 10% service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sort of equal parts teaching and research, and then of course the service to the college and community.
Mm-hmm.
So not an R1 institution. I didn't want to continue. I did not want to be in an R1. I wanted to be someplace where being a good teacher was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching the undergraduate biochemistry class in the summer really helped me to see that as this thing that I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that better than teaching med students.
Okay.
And I wanted to keep my research going. So being at a place like Vassar where I could have an effective, strong research program, but also that it wasn't the thing. Like if I didn't get a grant, like my life wasn't over. I just watched that at Duke so many times. I didn't want to get on that kind of wagon wheel spinning around.
What has been your research interest?
So I study the lipids, the fats of E. coli, the bacteria that is ubiquitous in us and the world, to try and understand how a class of lipids that are in E. coli are made and their function and role in the cell. So I use all sorts of techniques from very chemical to very biological to really classical biochemical approaches to understand this system and bring undergraduates along for the ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how long were you at Vassar?
12 years.
And then where do you go next?
I went to Sweetbriar. That's where while I was at Vassar, I moved through, the tenure and promotion pathway, and then I moved into the administration towards the end of my time there. First taking on a major leadership role in assessment, and then associate dean of the faculty. And then if I was going to move up in the, positions, then it meant that I needed to move out. And so that was when I took the position at Sweetbriar.
Okay. And when you got to Sweetbriar, the titles and position you have now, is that what you came in under, or has that changed since
I came in as a vice president of academic affairs and dean of the college.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So can you share a personal experience where you had to overcome a significant challenge in your journey within higher ed?
There's I was talking to a friend about being in our roles. And he and I were discussing how it is this role where you have to just be even in the face of all sorts of stuff. So it's this thing where when you ask that question, nothing like jumps to mind,
Mm-hmm.
because the things that roll at you, you just deal with. But I mean, I can say like probably one of the most trying, challenging days at Sweetbriar for me was I had a staff member die
Mm.
unexpectedly. And
They're tough.
yeah, and I had to um, tell all of my direct reports about their colleague. And I was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I personally was a mess. I mean, this was a person that I cared about, and like, it was terrible. It was a terrible day. And one in which it reinforced to me the kind of importance in our roles of being human
Mm.
and letting people help you. Um, I mean, I was going around doing this work, like showing up at somebody's office saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to talk to you. And then telling them, and then they would break down, and then I would break down, and then I would go to the next office, rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then just the support that I got from other people to navigate all this stuff that had to get done, right? Like there had to be an announcement to the community, and somebody wrote that, and those sorts of things. So
Eventually, someone has to clean out the office, and
that's
everyone.
right. I mean, I had to speak to her husband on the phone, and I will never forget that conversation where this man was a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to save her and I couldn't.
Mm.
It was terrible. Um, I think the other, so the other challenges are around that I faced have been around things that I really care deeply about. And I can't move forward. And I cannot be, and when I'm not effective at helping my colleagues and others understand why this is such an important thing that we need to pay attention to,
Mm-hmm.
those are really hard. And it's always been a thing that I felt was really important for the people that I supervise, for my people, right? The students, the
Mm-hmm.
faculty, my staff. And it's not that those are mine, right? like they're not mine. But when it comes to those things that I feel really passionately about, I yeah, those are really hard days when I'm not effective at that. And especially if I feel like the things that are not happening or the things that are happening that I want to stop are unkind.
I
Yeah.
I want to back up just for a second because when you were sharing that deeply moving story, you shared something, and I don't even know if you gave two thoughts to it, but you talked about how you went to each individual person's office. And I just think as a leader, that is so telling of your style because instead of making them come to you, like you went and met them where they were at in probably a space that's safer for them. And I mean, more taxing for you because, like you said, you have to relive that
Yeah.
telling him that emotion over and over. But I just wanted to acknowledge that, like
Yeah. Thank you.
that was I heard that and I was like, that's really
Yeah.
a leadership trait that I think is just sometimes those little things go unnoticed. So speaking of
Yeah.
leadership, um, in your role, how have you approached leadership with innovation or trying like a forward thinking mindset?
I think that I am always questioning, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things about the academy is that it's very stodgy. It's like a big old curmudgeon, does not want to change. And and especially stepping into this giant administrative role, and one in which not only am I navigating all the rules and processes and stuff around faculty reviews and hiring and all of the like, right? Which I had a lot of experience with. I'm now at Sweetbriar also navigating through administering the academic curriculum to students and all the rules and law of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, why is this like this? Why is this so complicated? I can't remember all of these things. And we're expecting students, particularly students who are first gen or students who are just struggling to understand all of not only all the resources that are available to them, but all the consequences that come, right, for the various decisions that are being made. And so I'm really trying in my leadership to not be the person who's just recapitulating things that have always happened for whatever reason. And when possible, if I see something that needs to get changed, like let's change it, because it can't be a thing that is holding back students' path to graduation or faculty's movement through the review process. I'll give you an example from faculty review. I had a faculty member come up for tenure, and part of the requirements is a CV, of course, right? And I look at her CV and there's so much missing that I know that this person has done. That she has contributed to the college. It's not there. It's not in her personal statement. And so I know it. Many of her colleagues who were reviewing her know it. So I said to the faculty advancement committee, which is the faculty body that is part of the tenure and review process, can we please formalize what needs to be on the CV that is part of the tenure and review process? And a faculty member was like, well, they should know. And I'm like, but they don't. See, here you go. Like, it wasn't here.
Yeah. Who told them, right? How they
Who told them? Right. And this never should be a process where we just like sit back and say, oh, well, did they figure it out? Right. Too much is at stake in the tenure process. Too much is at stake for students. Oh, well, they should know that the withdraw date is coming. Can we send out an Instagram message about it, please? Right? Can we post something on Yik Yak or TikTok? I don't know what. Like, can we do all of those things? Because this idea that people should know or they should figure it out on their own, I just don't have too much patience for. So I think that's me trying to be a person that's I'm trying in my leadership to always be a person who's thinking about things from other people's perspectives and not just only seeing the world through my eyes.
And that actually leads into my next question, is sharing a specific initiative that you had that had an impact on maybe creating a more inclusive environment.
One of the things that I did at Sweetbriar was shift the Academic Resource Center from being the Academic Resource Center to the Office of Student Success and Belonging. And this was an initiative that really was about signaling to students, faculty, the whole community that belonging at an institution is intimately intertwined with academic success. And so that also blurred the lines between student life and academic affairs, which I think is also really critical, especially at a small residential college, that students are not experiencing these things in the towers that they exist, right?
No,
they
absolutely.
They're experiencing the college, and they don't really understand why what's happening here is separate from this. And so I think that was something that really was about signaling that's really important. And it led to, programs coming out of that, such as a open dialogue series that was held and scheduled around faculty meetings, right? Scheduled in, it mostly came out of, a student affairs side, but we made sure it was scheduled around academic affairs events so that faculty could attend. And then making sure that this was something faculty knew about and came out from my office. You need to go to this thing, right? Because those events in particular, the presence of faculty and staff at them is really meaningful for students. Never mind like the positive impact that going to a dialogue around microaggressions or religious trauma or the experience of being LGBTQ, that educational thing that happens to a person, but the students seeing you there, it's huge for them feeling like, oh, this is a person for whom I can extend some good faith as they struggle through their journey to becoming a person who is able to support people no matter what their identities are. And that is a journey that people are on who, I mean, all people are on, especially students, but even faculty who've been in the academy for a really long time. Like the world is a continually changing place in which we're coming to a better understanding of how to be with one another, and that takes work to keep up with that.
Well, and I love calling it having belonging in the title. I just think that's very impactful, especially if you're looking at like first gen students and who are searching for that place where they exist. So I think that's great. How have you challenged traditional norms and reshaped culture within the academic community?
Oh, interesting question. Again, I think it comes to that, just asking, especially coming into Sweetbriar as an outsider, why are we doing this? What's happening here? And I did that around academic policy. I think, there were things that were happening that to follow the rules was not going to actually support students moving through the academy. And so in my deanly power, if you will, I would override those rules and then I would work with the faculty to change them. So for example, at Sweetbriar there was a rule that you couldn't take a class more than twice, and that's it, right? But we have a 10 course sequence of our gen ed program that there's no substitutions. So if you fail one of those core classes twice, then what? Right? Then you are gone from the college, I guess. So I think
that, or are you letting them continue to work towards a degree that they may never get because of the sequence
that they would never be able to get because you don't let them repeat this class that they have to pass.
Right.
So of course I was just like, Dean's petition, yes, signed. Faculty, fix this. I think another way that I was kind of pushing innovation was around a library. Sweetbriar has this beautiful library. It's gorgeous. And when I first got there, it was really there's a lot of grumpiness about it being used for events and also the hours and, things like that. And especially in our current age where so much is on our devices or digitally available, I think we need to rethink the place of a library, like the physical building, what it's doing and what it means and what it's for. And then even when you sort of are in a physical library, well, you're surrounded by knowledge, you're surrounded by uh, thoughts, and I just think it should be noisy. I think if learning is happening, it should be noisy. Like there should be noise. There should be
Which is the
people
opposite
together.
of what we think of, right? We think of shh.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm,
I'm gonna be quiet. No, make some noise.
mhm,
Like, oh my God,
mhm,
I found this book. Um, of course, there should be quiet places for students to study on a college campus, whether that's in the library or not, right?
mhm,
But I think rethinking the role of libraries is a thing I was really pushing hard for. And we were having events there, um, and we were having, uh, we had puzzles out for students to go sit down and do. They had, and really thinking about the skills and the training that librarians have that's critical, especially for now, for
mhm,
students to have and for faculty to take advantage of. So around information literacy, around developing that sniffer,
mhm. I
right?
like that. Mhm.
We cannot move through the world without being able to look at something and be like, really? Is that really right? And then knowing how to verify that with good information, not just the first thing that Google pops up.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that that was one area in which I was kind of pushing things. Um, the other area that I think colleges need to be pushing on is what on the blurring of the lines, and I mentioned this already before, but the blurring of the lines among faculty and staff. And I'm going to use staff, not just student affairs staff, but all staff,
Oh,
because
mhm,
there's student facing staff in all different areas of the college, from the business office, buildings and grounds,
mhm.
the dining hall.
Absolutely.
Um, and I really think that there needs to be a focus on professional development for all staff, um, around student development, around the student experience, around what's happening in the classroom. And then I think there needs to be professional development for faculty around what's happening outside the classroom, so that there's a shared understanding of the importance of each person's role, right? Real professional development for campus safety around the demography of students, around the experiences of students who are not traditionally represented in higher ed, around their experiences of law enforcement that they may be bringing to campus that then is part of their interaction with them. So all of those things, I think, was something that I was trying to push. I'd push a little bit
Mhm,
and I'd push some more. And the things that I had control over, like professional development activities that my office sponsored, were more or less open to anybody to come to.
mhm.
And people from development came, certainly coaches and their role in academic support. So I think this blurring of those areas together to the good of the student's experience is really a thing that deserves a lot of attention, especially in small schools.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. What is the role of mentorship played in your journey?
Um, so I've always gone with this idea of wise counsel. I'm sorry, it's raining now, so
Okay, it's
it's
okay.
too
We
much
can't
noise.
hear it.
Yeah, okay. Um, this idea of wise counsel. And so I have always had people that I've turned to for that
Mhm,
in different areas. So, um, you know, my friend who's a former CFO, you're help me to be a better person interacting with the CFO at Sweetbriar. Um, my former boss from Vassar, help me with this hiring problem that I have to deal with. I'm really having a hard time.
mhm,
Um, that And then I also see that as, wise counsel from people who may even report to me, who just know stuff that I don't know. So, you know, the director of career services help me understand how we can talk about this issue effectively. What can you do with that? So that's my personal approach to mentorship, is not like you are my mentor.
Get a
It just can feel
badge.
feel very heavy and kind of like this thing that you have to be all things to
Mhm.
somebody. Um, and I always encourage students to seek out people who from different perspectives to inform what they're going to ultimately decide. Um, and and so that's been my approach to mentorship.
So, this is a project on stories and narratives of women in higher ed. So, what way do you think sharing narratives can inspire or empower the next generation of women in higher ed?
Yeah, I think it's hugely impactful. I think, my story of leaving and coming back is
Mhm.
one that I share readily, because when I made that decision, it felt really lonely
Mhm.
because no one that I was around had made that decision. And then a couple years after I sort of started back part time, I spoke to this woman who was a biochemist. She was older, maybe like 25 years older than me. And she says to me, "Oh, I did the same thing." And I was like, "What?"
Mhm.
Why don't we know this is a thing? Why do we not have this as something that women know about as an option, and men, right? That they could say, well, you know what? I want to be a stay-at-home dad for a while. And
Without
then
the
I can,
shame that comes with it.
that's right. Without people saying to them, you leave, you're never going to be able to get back. Well, it's
Mhm.
just wrong. I went up for tenure. I took 4.5 years off. I went up for tenure a year early, and I went up for full professor a year early. So I only lost 2 years.
Mhm.
So 2 years to have 4 years with my children when they were these little things that I didn't feel good about. I personally did not feel good about leaving. I know that that was a privilege that I had because of my circumstances, that I was able to do that. But um, I've talked to so many women who are afraid to even ask for it.
Mm.
They're afraid to ask for part-time hours. They're afraid to. So I I think that that's the importance of all of our myriad journeys through this world, where we're trying to decide when to have babies or not, or what that means, how to share our stories or not, like how we all have done that. We need to put that out there so that people can be the same as what we do with students, right? People can be like, oh, I could be like her. Oh,
Mhm.
I could do that thing, and not feel like you're forging with a machete through this path that no one has ever gone through before. And
100%.
yeah, so I think this is a great project in that regard, because we need to know that people are out there struggling with the same things that we're struggling with, and that, well, they did this and it worked, or they did this and it didn't work. And oh, but that combination would work for me because of my particular situation.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Not the last, but the next section of questions are fill in the blank. So I'm just going to
uh-huh,
read a statement and fill in whatever comes to mind. Women in higher education are
underrepresented
higher education continues to be relevant because
because it clearly improves the outcomes for the people who go through it in terms of wage, wealth, opportunity, happiness, agility, uh, it, all of those things.
the perceived value of higher education is
Not accurate. It is not accurate. It is absolutely not accurate.
10
So,
years from now, blank will become the norm in higher education.
oh, AI will be all over everything. It will be a
Widely
thing.
accepted or
It will
barriers that we're
be
trying
it
to
will
create now?
be a tool that's used for admissions, student affairs, for by faculty, by students. I actually said to somebody, they were talking about how they were having admission, how were faculty and admissions interacting, and the admissions person says, well, we have the faculty read these essays for this scholarship. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be better if the faculty like recruited the students and could maybe an AI read the essay? I don't know, like how we're going to be taking things in which personal human interaction is required and elevating those and putting those on people, and then other things that are more perfunctory is going to be happening by an AI. That's my expectation.
I think very similarly.
Yeah,
I do this work because blank.
because at the depths of my soul, I am a person who wants to help people become their best, most amazing selves.
I love that. All right, these are rapid questions that have nothing to
Okay.
do with higher ed. A book you wish everyone would read.
A Wrinkle in Time.
If you weren't a leader at your current institution, what would you be doing?
Teaching adults to swim.
Favorite candy or snack?
Oh, chocolate.
And last, what is your favorite word?
Okay, this is gonna make you laugh, but it's not actually a word, but it's a word I made up. And the word is insufficient.
Well, to tell us what that means.
So it means I'll use it in a sentence. Um, it was really surprising that she couldn't smell the flower, but it was because she was insufficient.
Well, you better trademark that quickly.
I've been trying to get that word to catch on. I want it to be in the dictionary before I die.
Bucket list item.
I I first said that at dinner with my family, and I laughed for like 10 minutes at myself, and they just were like, oh my God.
I often think I am funnier than my family gives me credit for, so I can commiserate with you on that.
But like in COVID, people became insufficient. So it totally should be a word.
Yes, my sister was insufficient for a year after
Right.
COVID.
See,
So
look how easy it is. You can help me with this.
well, you need to get it in like a kids like a Bluey episode. And then everyone will be saying it all
And
the
then the kids will be saying it, and then
time.
yeah, I have too many boogies in my nose, and it made me insufficient.
Well, thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
me today and sharing your story and just how impactful, as you said, I think the journey you've taken is similar to so many women in higher ed, and it's just often not talked about or talked about in a negative light. And I don't think that needs to be the case. So thank you for sharing so much, and I really appreciate it.